morning, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of today's opening bell, or how we call it here in Romania, ZEFE, Deschiderea De Astăzi. We're coming after a few interesting, let's say, days with an all-time high for bets on Thursday. And on Friday, we had this, let's say, bad news regarding the economy with technical recession. And on Monday we had no surprises there, let's say. But we will now see how the Bucharest Stock Exchange looks like from the eyes or from the perspective of DIVO Politika. He's a board member for Intercapital ETF, the leading investment services provider in this part of Europe, in Southeast Europe. DIVO, good morning.
Good morning. Very happy to be here.
Thank you for accepting our invitation, DIVO, and it's good to see you again because you've been a constant presence here on our interview. How are you? How was 2026 so far?
Well, for us, same as I would guess for any other asset manager in this part of Europe, it's been amazing. It's one of the best starts of the years we've had almost ever, I would say, both in terms of market performance and in terms of interest from the clients, in terms of inflows. So yeah, the year is going very good so far.
Best start of the year, at least at Bucharest Stock Exchange, since 2000 and I think 12, if I'm not mistaken, the best month in almost 14 years. And you're saying that you can see this good evolution as well in the region. How come? Why? What didn't change?
Yeah, well, you mentioned before that these days are one of the all-time highs in Bucharest, on the Bucharest Stock Exchange. A similar thing is going on throughout the region. So Slovenia had a high, Croatia had a high ever since the 2008 recession, and so on. So it's really something that I would say Romania has in a way been mimicking what's going on everywhere else in that regard. We see something similar in Poland, in Hungary, Bulgaria as well, one of the best performing indices globally this year. So yeah, I would say that a lot of investors have started recognizing this region, and more interest is coming from within the region itself. Yeah, so hopefully this is something that we'll be able to count on in the future as well.
Before I ask you, because I'm really curious to see your first thoughts regarding the technical recession. Do you think that the adoption of euro that drew the SOFIX index by a lot in January somehow influenced Romania as well, the performance here?
Well, I wouldn't draw that conclusion. I would say that maybe the reason why the SOFIX index, which is Bulgaria's main stock exchange index, performed so well, and in January was the best performing index globally, we could say that was related to the euro adoption. So maybe that's the adoption of the euro maybe pushed SOFIX a bit above the average for the region this year. But yeah, I wouldn't say it impacted Romania. We saw a similar, I would say, maybe increase in interest from investors when Croatia introduced the euro as well in 2023. Although unfortunately, that was a year that was also marked with a general hike in prices, inflation, and so on. So it's very difficult to actually separate this effect in Croatia alone. But yeah, I would say for Bulgaria, this was a big plus, not necessarily impacting Romania.
Technical recession here in Romania with the last 2 quarters. How do you see things?
Yeah, well, I mean, myself personally, and we see this from other investors as well, if we see what's been going on the bonds market, I don't think this is being seen as somehow a big drama, a big problem at this point. We've seen the Romanian government has last year introduced a set of measures to bring their budget under control. And what we've been saying, and what a lot of research has been saying, is that, okay, these measures are at this point necessary. They're kind of a fire extinguishing measure at this point. But going further into the future, Romania will need to move past simply collecting, increasing taxes and introducing measures that actually boost the economy in a longer term. So I would say that a lot of people were expecting that the measures would have a negative impact. Some of them maybe disagreed whether there will be a slight plus or a slight minus in GDP growth in a couple of quarters. But I would say in a long term and looking into Romania in the future, most investors haven't changed their view. I'm just checking what's going on the euro bonds for Romania. It's touching one of the lows, we would say, in terms of yield and in terms of actually this kind of a difference to developed markets. So at this point, Romanian 10-year bond in euros is traded at slightly above 5% annually, 5.1%. You may remember that last year the hike was more than 6%. We entered 2026 at 5.6. So really the bond market, which I think mirrors the economy the most and what international investors are expecting and how they see the economy, this is going rather well. I still think that investors have confidence that Romania will be able to pull through, I would say, the budget issues that they have, and they still believe that the government will be able to introduce measures to boost growth further along the way.
Yeah, it's true, and I really liked it how you said no big drama, because when I looked at the data on Friday after the announcement, the Romanian 10-year bond yield was a bit higher, not that much, I think 0.2-0.3% higher, but it was still around the 62 weeks minimum. So that's a plus for the economy, for the government, this government. But one of the biggest surprise, and I will close this subject with the recession, was that Romania was also in a technical recession in 2024 because we had this revised statistics from the National Institute of Statistics that they are being released with a delay of 2 years. So technically, if you put it like this, it's not the first one since the pandemic. It's actually the second one since the pandemic. Maybe some investors already looked at it, and that's why the stock market didn't go like some part of the media suspected it will go. How do you see the rest of the year? So with what we have on the table right now, with what is going on in the US, with the Europe being more, let's say, more for Europeans, and of course with the great performance in this part of Europe for stocks.
Yeah. Well, I'm still optimistic globally, I would say, although I think everyone is following what's going on, especially with the Trump administration. So we could say you never know what the next tweet will be. But let's assume that there is no big surprise there. I don't foresee anything major happening at this point. I would say that the change in European politics is actually, in a longer term, a good thing for Europe. I would agree that we were in a way too reliant on the US in some regards, especially in defense and so on. So more investments at home means also more investments into domestic companies, into domestic growth, and so on. How this impacts Romania, and actually let's start with this region from, let's say, Poland, Greece, Romania, that kind of a triangle in a way. The good thing there is that it's still relatively cheap, I would say, compared to Western Europe in terms of salaries. But I would say that in terms of knowledge, human capital, it's very much caught up to the rest. So I believe that if there are huge investments into Europe, that our region will probably be able to take a bigger part of that cake in a way. Romania is very interesting for this year, so definitely I expect volatility in a way. With the increased taxes and so on, we'll see how that impacts the budget, how that impacts GDP growth, and so on. We also have the fact that the prices on gas will be the cap will be removed later this year. So we'll see how that plays around. That might have an effect on inflation, but I mean it's supposed to happen once the more, let's say, energy intensive part of the year is over. So maybe the effect will not be too big. But talking to other investors, and a major point that a lot of us focuses on regarding Romania this year is that this is basically the last year before we start seeing some kind of a result from Neptune Deep and before the extraction begins. So I would say that there's been a lot of positioning going on around that. If you take a look at what's been going on the Bucharest Stock Exchange, since the beginning of this year, the average turnover is basically doubled compared to last year. And a lot of this has gone into the energy companies like mostly Petrom and Romgaz, so the ones actually participating in Neptune Deep. And I think this will be driving even more interest from investors this year. And hopefully starting next year, we will start seeing the first effects on results, both for these companies alone and the economy as a whole.
But in what measure, Divo, do you think that the share prices of Romgaz, Transgaz, and Petrom have already priced in Neptune Deep? Because if we are to look at 2025, Transgaz went up by 180%, Romgaz doubled, Petrom was also a key performer.
Yeah, well, looking at price performance alone doesn't usually give you the full picture because you never know whether the starting point was very low, right? So when we look at companies and when we look at the Romanian market as a whole, we look at the relative prices, so these so-called multiples, primarily price earnings, for example, which is up in Romania. At this point, the entire index as a whole is traded somewhat below 14 times earnings, which is one of the highs we've seen in many previous years. So in this way, I would say that Romania has finally caught up or started catching up in a way to other markets, because for a very, very long time, we were saying that Romania was more than obviously underpriced, and there was a lot of more potential. So even with the prices that we have right now, I would say Romania is somewhere around the averages. Now, take into account the growth in earnings that we could expect starting next year. All of the companies that you mentioned, so we expect an impact on both Romgaz, Petrom, and Transgaz. Once that is factored in, I believe that there is reason to assume that the stock prices will continue following the earnings growth. 13-14% price to earnings would be something that's in this economy and in this, let's say, global perspective, something that I think is here to stay for Romania, and there's a reason to, for investors to be willing to pay this much. So I wouldn't be concerned in that way there. On the other hand, if we look at the dividends that all of the Romanian companies have been paying, or even if we focus on Petrom alone, which is a big driver of the Neptune Deep, right? And even with all these huge investments that they did, the amount of dividends that they've been giving has been huge. So we're talking almost 10% dividend yield for them and 4 and something% for the index as a whole. We also expect that once the earnings from this project start coming in, there will be room for even more dividends. And that is something that will also, I think, attract more investors.
Let's see about the ETFs, DIVO. What's the most recent value that you have on the on Romanian instruments?
You mean for Intercapital ETFs alone? So
yes.
In total at this moment we have, so this is all of our ETFs across the board. We have about 180 million euros under management. Romania is a smaller part of this. So we are in Romania alone, we are at somewhat below 30 million. But what we are very happy with is the growth that we've been seeing both this year and last year as well. Just maybe to put this into perspective, our Romanian ETF has, since the beginning of the year, attracted more than 4 million euros, which is which means that it grew more than 10% of its own size with inflows alone. We see the other ETFs, the other Romania-focused ETFs on the Romanian exchange from other providers growing by more than 20 million euros this year from inflows alone. So this has been a huge boost for Romania. If we take into account that this is in average more than 1 million euros per day for all the ETFs tracking Romania, we see that this is somewhere around 5 to 10% of the volume that the Romanian Stock Exchange has been having this year. So the ETFs have really become, I would say, and are becoming even more important part of the flows that are going on here.
DIVO, let me see if I understood correctly. 1 million euro on average per day since the beginning of 2026 in inflows on Romanian ETFs?
On all the ETFs that track the BET index. So not only Intercapital, but also the other providers that you have on the local stock exchange.
There are not a lot of providers. we can
okay.
And about
it's obvious they are.
And strictly for Intercapital, that would be like half of this amount?
No, we had 4 million euros in total inflows into our Romanian ETF this year. And across the board for all of our ETFs, we had somewhat more than 20 million net inflows in euros.
Inflows, people bringing money into ETFs.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have any explanation from where the money come from bank deposits, from stocks, from bonds?
Well, it differs across the ETFs and so on. So, for example, in Romania, this is a calculation that we make based on the some of the statistics that all the providers put in the stock exchange daily. It seems that pretty much all of this was retail investors, which is, I think, a really good thing in terms of making the local market even more popular domestically. This really shows you that Romanians are recognizing Romania as such. For us, for example, for Romania, a lot of these inflows were institutions, so institutional investors. Most of them Croatian and Slovenian funds who wanted more exposure into Romania, and that's why they choose our ETF to do it.
Okay, DIVO, 2 more questions, please. What are your plans for Romania regarding the launch of ETFs?
Well, right now we are launching the Polish ETF. I mean, there's still some regulatory, period and so on. But I would say I hope that we'll be able to list it in Zagreb in 2 or 3 months. Then we'll work on bringing it to Romania as well. So our plan is to actually bring all the ETFs that we introduce in the future to Romania as well. And then our next project will be listing our ETFs in Warsaw, including our BET ETF. So we hope that in a couple of months we'll be happy to say that Romanian stocks can be traded on the Warsaw Stock Exchange this way as well.
Okay, why Romania, for instance? Why did you decide to bring, or why will you decide to bring the Polish ETF in Romania?
Well, it's not just our strategy is not just to bring the Polish ETF into Romania. We bring all of our ETFs into Romania. But why we chose Poland this time is that we think it really fits well within our regional story. It's a country, it's an economy that had an amazing growth, but even more importantly, we believe that there's a lot more to go in the future. The geopolitics, regarding hopefully at some point the end of war in Ukraine, and then the rebuilding of the countries, we believe that Poland will be one of the big drivers of this. The Polish economy has proven to be rather resilient in these past years, and most of the expectations are for the growth to continue. And it's interesting in terms of diversification within the region. So if you compare Poland to some of the other ETFs, some of the other markets that we cover, you can see a lot of new sectors in a way. So I think that for all those investors who do want to give our region a chance, and I believe there is a lot of reasons to do it, it's good to diversify after all. Exposure to one single small country always brings a certain risk. But I do believe that our region as a whole is a good investment story at this point.
Okay, the ETF will be based on WIG20 Polish stocks.
WIG 30 actually.
WIG 30.
It's a bit it's a bit broader. There are some other providers who already offer WIG20, so we believe that we wanted to do something more. We think that it makes sense to make it broader. Poland is a much more liquid market, a much cheaper market in terms of trading. So, having an ETF with 30 stocks there can be maybe even easier than having one in Croatia, which tracks 10 companies.
Will the cost be the same as your actual ETF?
Well, for all our equity ETFs, we target less than 1% total expense ratio. And from what we've had on the 3 existing ones, it's actually well below 1%. So we're talking like 90 basis points. Poland will be close to this as well. Yeah.
Okay. And when do you see a timing taking place? Launching taking place?
Yeah, as I said, we hope to have it listed in Croatia in like 2 months.
Okay.
Once we have it here, we'll start the process of listing in Romania. I mean, our experience has been that the listing in Romania usually takes a couple, maybe up to 6 months. So, but it doesn't depend on us solely. It's also about the local regulator, the stock exchange, and so on. So it's a process that needs to happen.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for bringing more instruments here. So if I were to conclude or to give a news headline, let's say, so the intermediary, the company that put Croatia on the European map of ETFs, is preparing to launch an ETF focused on Polish WIG30 at Bucharest Stock Exchange. So the Romanian investors will be able to buy Polish stocks in RON. in lei.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
On the local
Thank you.
exchange. In Zagreb, it will be euros. In Poland, it will be zlot. On the local. Yeah.
Don't you like the globalization of the stock markets? So Croatians working with Polish authorities to launch something at Bucharest. It feels amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah, you learn a lot about how the local markets and the European single market works when you try to do ETFs cross-border. Definitely, there's a lot of challenges, but we try to make it work.
Thank you very much, Dibor, for your time, for the explanations, and we will be looking forward to more products from Intercapital ETF here at Bucharest Stock Exchange. DIVO Politika, Intercapital ETF. Thank you again, Dibor.
Thank you for having me. Have a nice day.
Thank you. I will now switch to Romanian for the closing remarks. Până data viitoare, fir întins la investiții câștigătoare. Numai bine!